you may have a really busy life. You may have a demanding job, and you may find or feel that exercise isn't something that you can do because you just don't have time. Well, today I'm talking to Dr. Minil Patel, who's an NHS doctor. He has a really, really busy professional life, but he finds time to exercise, and he's going to explain why he finds the time, how he finds the time, and we're also going to talk about that pesky thing about where do vegans get their protein from. Okay, so you were into weight training and you decided to become vegan. So can you tell us a bit about that, about how that worked out? I mean, a lot of people would say if you're weight training, the last thing you should do is become vegan.
It's funny you say that because actually, when I was thinking about going vegan, or kind of toying with the idea in my brain, the one thing that was holding me back was the fact that I was so into lifting weights and training. Because early on in my kind of weightlifting journey, if you want to call it a journey, everything I was reading was saying that you needed to eat meat for protein, you needed meat to build muscle, it's the best quality protein, all of this stuff that you're reading everywhere. The experts at the time were all saying the same thing. And whenever there was a mention of vegan or vegetarian diets, it was like, oh, it's inferior. You can't build good quality muscle on it. It's not optimal. So it kind of scared me off a bit. And yeah, I remember having this discussion with my ex-partner at the time who was vegan, and I was saying, look, I would love to do it ethically. I can't argue against it. Environmentally, ethically, it all makes sense, but I just can't. I want to keep building muscle. But then what happened was she showed me it was a Facebook group actually. It was a group called Vegan Bodybuilders and Athletes, and I was like, okay. And there was just loads of people there sharing like recipes, progress photos, all of this stuff. And I was like, wow, if they're all doing it, like these are all people that are living it, what excuse do I really have? My main fear was that I just couldn't see myself doing it. So it was more when I saw other people doing it, I was like, okay, fine, I can give this a go. I still then wasn't quite ready to go vegan until then. What actually led me to going vegan was watching a video online, which kind of showed how animals were being treated, and watched that video, and it was the last straw for me. I kind of overnight went, okay, that's it. I'm not having any animal products now. So I didn't even do a gradual sort of thing. I just kind of overnight made the decision. So yeah, in the early stages, it was like, okay, what am I going to eat now? I knew I needed to get protein because I was so protein obsessed at the time as well. It's kind of like, okay, what plant-based foods can I eat? And at that time, there's a lot of vegan meat replacements because they were quite high in protein. So in my head, it was replacing like for like. I knew beans had protein, but I also knew they also had a good amount of carbohydrates. So I wanted something that was really like for like. So I was having like soy chunks, textured vegetable protein. I wasn't quite at the stage where I would eat tofu or tempeh early on because I'll be brutally honest, it just wasn't palatable to me. I didn't know how to cook with it. That's a skill issue as well, isn't it? Like I'm sure you'll agree. Once you learn to cook with tofu and tempeh, it can be amazing. But a lot of people starting out who've always eaten meat, they can take one bite of tofu and they say, "Oh, that's not for me." So it was a steep learning curve.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I guess making that transition at the start was one of the most difficult things. But as I found, the more I kind of learned, the more I sort of incorporated these different plant-based meats and beans, and then eventually tofu and tempeh into my diet, found that I was still making progress in the gym. I was still getting stronger. Um, yes, I kind of proved to myself there was no excuse. And then it became a thing where I had to actually tell people, look, guys, there's certainly no reason for someone who's into fitness not to go vegan. With a whole food vegan diet or leaning on mostly whole foods, I found that I just felt healthier. I felt I was recovering better, less inflammation, less achy joints, and your overall health is better. You're more likely to make more gains in the gym as well. A lot of bodybuilders that do lean on the kind of meat, processed meats, junk food, they tend to feel rubbish as well. And they might be building muscle, but they probably could be recovering a lot better if they weren't doing that. And they're probably harming their health a lot more as well. So I guess with a you know with trying to build muscle on a healthy vegan diet, you're getting the best of both worlds. Like you're able to eat the nourishing foods that you need to recover and build good health, and you also provided you're getting enough protein. There's no reason you can't build muscle as well. So it's a win-win situation, really.
Have you found people are much more accepting that a vegan diet, you can do have a vegan diet and be a weightlifter
I think,
as well?
yeah, slowly the tide is changing. I think 7 years ago when I first went vegan, it was still a bit like, nah, you can't. It's there was a lot more skeptics. But I think obviously since
Yeah.
so 2017 is when I went vegan. around 2019 is when I think the movie Game Changers came out, 2019, 2020. So then I think after that came out, that really changed a lot of people's perception of veganism. You saw a lot of kind of fit athletes, men and women, on this documentary, which really showcased what can be done on a vegan diet. And then you're getting more and more athletes and sports stars going, plant-based or vegan for their health, or for the environment, or for ethics. So yeah, the more people do it, the more I'm seeing it become accepted. I remember actually recently I was in a gym with two other vegan bodybuilders, and we were just finishing training. We were talking about where to go for lunch, and someone overheard us and was like, "Oh, there's a good steak place down the road." And all three of us went, "We're vegan." And he just laughed and went, "Oh, sorry, guys." And then one of the guys was like, "Well, you're either way, you're really massive anyway to someone I was with." And he's like, "Yo, there's no difference, is there?" And the guy was like, "Yeah, there's no difference, provided you eat properly. There's no difference, and train hard." So even that guy was accepting, and maybe 10 years ago, he wouldn't have been so accepting of the fact that. So it was nice to see actually this interaction with someone who just recommended us to go eat steak, actually saying, "Oh yeah, there's nothing. I mean, if you're vegan, you can definitely build muscle." And he was looking at three guys that had done it. So yeah, I think a lot more people are accepting of it.
And did he ask you that common question of where do you get your
No, actually,
protein
he didn't
from?
ask that, but I have been asked that a lot of times. I think, especially if I wear a T-shirt that says vegan or plant-based on it, or someone finds out, it's the first thing they ask you, like, where do you get your protein? It's one of those questions that, if I had a penny for every time someone asked me, kind of questions, isn't it? So it's the first thing people want to know, but he didn't ask. But I'm sure it's not even something we think about now. It's such a ingrained thing in us. Where do we get our protein from? But I think for people that don't know, it is obviously very important to know what foods to lean on, because especially when I was first going into it, as I said to you, I went straight for plant-based meats. I didn't know about tofu, tempeh, sort of textured vegetable protein. I came to know then soy chunks, obviously beans, legumes, lentils, whole grains, nuts and seeds. All of these have protein in it. There's protein in every plant food. Even fruit has a teeny bit of protein in it. I wouldn't lean on fruit for protein, but everything has protein. So I think that myth that vegetables or plants can have any protein is obviously a myth. It's just been perpetuated by society thinking that only meat, dairy, and eggs and fish contain protein. It's certainly not true, right? There's whole societies throughout the world that lean on grains and lentils for their protein source. So it's just being aware that yes, plants contain protein, and then how to sort of build your diet that's centered around high protein vegan foods as well. And I don't want people to obsess over protein because, again, I think people probably eat a lot more than they need to, especially people that go to the gym, because it's marketed in such a way that, oh, you need to have protein shakes, protein, protein, protein. Every food you look at, high protein this, this has high protein. It's just marketed in that way. Every, bar you pick up, it's there. I think we've become a protein obsessed society where really you need a lot less than you think. So even though the RDA is set at zero point 0.8 grams per kilogram, I personally think the RDA is too little. I think the RDA is that bare minimum you need just to prevent deficiency. But if we're talking about optimal health, so someone who's interested in looking after the health, being the best versions of themselves, may not necessarily be weightlifting, but if they're just generally active, then aiming for about a gram per kilogram is what I tend to tell people. And if you are weightlifting or endurance athlete, someone who's exercising quite a lot, then aiming for a bit higher than that, about up to 1.6 grams per kilogram, we see the benefits sort of plateaus off. So that sweet spot, I think, for anyone that's lifting weights is 1.2 to 1.6. And after that, the benefits sort of plateaus off. There's some evidence that says that higher intakes of like 1.8 into 2 may be suitable for some athletes and people who are trying to actually lose body fat rather than retain muscle. So again, bodybuilders that are preparing to get really lean for stage, they tend to eat a bit higher, and that's fine temporarily. But I think on the whole, what aiming between 1.2 to 1.6 is that sweet spot, which is not a lot. So if you're a 70 kilogram person, I think that's about 112 grams of protein. It's not a huge amount. For someone who's 60 kilograms, I think it's about 90 grams of protein. So again, it's not a huge amount, and you can easily get that from a well planned plant based diet. So if you're having a breakfast that has oats with soy milk, some seeds, maybe some nut butter, that's an easy 20 grams right there without even putting any protein shake in it or anything. And then if you have 100 grams of tofu, that's another sort of 15 grams of protein. Half a tin of beans is another 9 grams of protein. This is just off the top of my head, thinking of all the different foods you can eat, but this all builds up and adds up over the course of the day. And provided you get enough by the end of the day, there's no real difference between that and a diet that's heavy on meat and stuff. So It's just being able to plan that diet well.
The argument, which I think we hear less often these days, is that if you're not eating meat and dairy, then you need to combine like beans and bread to get the full spectrum of essential amino acids. And you have to have them
Mm,
together at a meal, not beans now and
mm.
bread later. You will obviously know this better than I do, being a doctor and someone who's
Mm.
passionate about nutrition. I understand that that's no longer believed to be true.
Normally it's over the course of a day. So yeah, you're right. So we don't really have a protein requirement as such. We have an essential amino acid requirement. So protein is made of these single building blocks called amino acids, and there's 9 essential amino acids, which means we have to get them from our diet. Our body cannot make them. The other 11 or 12, depending on what you look at, can be made by the body depending on certain conditions. So these 9 essential amino acids you have to get from food. And it was previously thought that because certain plant-based protein sources are slightly lower in one or two of the amino acids, you have to combine it with another plant protein source, which is a bit higher in the other amino acids. So if you combine, you'll get the full complement and full
Yeah.
blend. Now, I think it's not a bad strategy because you can just do it very easily. Like people do it naturally anyway, right? When you have tortilla, you have it with beans. When you have rice, you have it with lentils. There's a combination happening anyway, but it's not necessary. Provided you get a varied amount throughout the day, then this combining thing just doesn't make a difference, because if you're having it throughout the day, then you're getting all the essential amino acids you need. Your body keeps sort of these free pools of amino acids in the blood during the course of the day. Obviously, we don't have any stores of protein. Protein is kind of um, bound up in our tissues, so our tendons, our muscles, our bones, and everything. So we don't actually have a store of protein like we do for fat and carbohydrates. So it's important that we do daily get our protein target. Um, but yeah, as I said, provided you're eating a variety or a combination, this combining thing doesn't really matter. And actually, at higher levels of intake, the whole thing about plant being incomplete and complete doesn't even matter anyway. So at higher levels of intake, you will get all the essential amino acids you need. So it becomes even less important.
When I hear people talking in the gym who
Mm,
aren't vegan, they're often obsessing about macros, protein,
mm,
fat, carbohydrates. And I look at them and think, I never hear you talking about, I don't know, the
mm,
importance of zinc, the importance of vitamin C, this sort of stuff. It's the micros. It's so
mm,
focused on the macros. And, I think you do your body a disservice if your whole diet is completely focused on getting the
mm.
macros right. And because getting the macros right doesn't necessarily mean you're going
No,
to get the
no,
micros
not
right.
always. I think people are focused on macronutrient intake mainly because of body composition goals. Everybody wants to be lean. Everybody wants to have a six pack. Everybody wants to have low body fat percentage, and we've sort of become obsessed with looking at how much protein, carbs, and fats we're eating in a day to achieve that sort of goal. Um, it's almost a form of disordered eating, and I confess that I've been in that place, and sometimes I think I'm less of it now completely, but especially when I am when I'm trying to diet down or get lean for a purpose, I certainly do pay attention to the macronutrient intake, because I know I need to get a certain amount of protein per day. I have a certain amount of carbohydrate and fat ratio per day as well to ensure I'm getting the right amount of calories I need for my goal. And that's what a lot of people are probably doing. They're looking at the total calories and thinking, okay, how can I split this in the protein, carbs, and fat? Um, Usually, if you're eating enough vegetables throughout the day, then you won't end up worrying about the micronutrients. So rule of thumb is for people that are dieting, they just sort of almost eat however many vegetables they can, really, because it keeps you full, it keeps you satiated, and that's going to cover all your micronutrient needs. But you're right, no one's sitting there going, "Oh, how much zinc have I had today, and how much vitamin C have I got in, or magnesium, or calcium?" Um, and I don't want people to obsess over over numbers. So right now, I don't really calculate the foods I eat, because it's sort of because of trial and error over time. I sort of know what foods to eat to make sure I get enough of each thing. But a lot of people, when they're starting out learning about nutrition, they will probably have to look at, okay, am I getting enough iron? Am I getting enough calcium? It's probably a good idea to just educate yourself on that, but not become obsessed. The reason we exercise and that we eat a healthy, varied diet is because you don't want it to seem like such an effort calculating all this stuff thing. It should become like almost effortless and just ingrained in you, and become a habit.
You're a busy doctor, and a lot of people say, my job is very demanding, whatever their job is. I work a lot of hours. I have other things going on in my life. How do you expect me to find time for fitness?
There's a couple ways to answer that question. I think one of the things is priorities. I think I prioritize my fitness. Some people might not. And we can talk about why we should prioritize it a bit later on, but definitely prioritizing fitness is something that's it's important to me. It sort of centers my day. I make sure I get some movement every day, no matter what it is. It could be as simple as going for a brisk walk. And I think also people's idea of what exercise is can also affect whether they make time for it or not. Because some people might think, oh, I haven't got 2 hours in the day to go to the gym. Well, you don't need to go to the gym for 2 hours. You don't need to do that at all. Movement or exercise can be as little as half an hour or even 10 minutes of vigorous exercise can be really beneficial. So I think people just need to find the time in the day. We get 24 hours in the day. You may spend about 7 to 8 hours of that sleeping. The rest of the waking 16 hours that you have in the day um, can be sort of organized. Like, I think if people looked at how much time they spend looking at their phones, looking at screens, watching TV shows, um, going out for drinks with their friends, which is all, some of these things are all important. I'm not saying people shouldn't do this stuff. They will be able to find half an hour, 4 or 5 times a week to be able to exercise. And that's literally all you really need. You need half an hour, 5 times a week. That's usually enough, provided that half an hour is concentrated effort at, trying to get your body moving, get your heart rate up, get your breathing faster. Over time, as you get fitter, you may be able to increase what you're doing, but the bare minimum is just getting going, and it's not as much as people think. And actually, we know that people who are sedentary, so people who are doing less than 30 minutes of activity per week, even going from that to just half an hour more has huge benefits. But doing some is much better than doing nothing. So I think people need to sort of look at their day and actually just plan it and put it in. So for me, it's now become a habit. I don't even need to think about it. I've been doing it for so long now. I think I've been training in the gym for about 10 years, and exercise has been part of my life for at least 10 years in terms of where I've kind of focused on it rather than it being something that was scheduled in by being at school. So since university, I've made it part of my day. So I think once people can look at their daily routines and their calendars and think, okay, where can I make even half an hour space? Can I do it in my own home? Can I do it just outside? The weather's good right now. Can I go for a brisk walk or a jog or even a run if you're capable? It's just about putting it into your day and making it part of your day. And then the longer you do that for, the more it becomes a habit and becomes easier.
So why should people make exercise, fitness a priority?
There's this famous quote, isn't there, that if exercise was a pill, it would be the most heavily prescribed and widely prescribed medication known to man, because exercise in itself has so many benefits from head to toe, completely systemically. It's just so good for us, and we know that. Everyone knows exercise is good for you. You can break it down by why it's so good for you. Just starting at the head, in terms of why it's good for your brain. It improves cognition. It reduces brain fog. It can help reduce the risk of dementia. It can help reduce the risk of depression. It can also help manage depression as well. There's some studies that I've kind of compared groups that did exercise and conventional therapy, or just conventional therapy alone, and the exercise group did much better in terms of their depressive symptoms. It can reduce the risk of strokes as well because of improved blood flow, reduces your blood pressure as well. So the benefits for your cardiovascular system, reducing your blood pressure, reducing the risk of heart attacks, reducing the risk of atherosclerosis, or plaque buildup. It improves the blood flow to the heart as well, so the coronary artery system, so reduce your risk of heart attacks or even the damage after a heart attack. It improves the functioning of your heart. So, every time you're exercising, you're getting your heart rate up. Your heart has to become a more efficient system at pumping the blood around. So you get more blood pumped around per beat. Your lungs get more efficient at taking the oxygen out of the air we breathe in and sending it around your body. So you start feeling better. You feel more energized. There's benefits to obviously your digestion as well. We know when we go for a walk after a meal, like, we digest the food better, improves your bowel movements. There's been evidence that it improves the gut microbiome just by exercising. I could go on. Reducing your risk of type 2 diabetes as well, because when we exercise, we use our energy better. So the food we take in gets broken down into sugars and fats, and when we exercise, we can actually use that a bit better. If we're sedentary, we tend not to, and we just store it, which increases the risk of type 2 diabetes and high cholesterol. Breast cancer, colon cancer, especially endometrial cancer, I've seen as well. There's some evidence for lung cancer and bladder cancer. So yeah, preventative for some certain cancers. We don't exactly know 100% know why that even is, but we know that groups that exercise more have lower rates of cancers. Osteoporosis is a big one. As we age, our bones reach their peak bone mass at the age of 30. So from 30 onwards, it's sort of, I've hit that point now. So for me now, it's maintaining that peak bone mass. And as we get older, we know that your bones tend to get more weaker and more frail, which increases the risk of fractures, a process known as osteoporosis. So actually lifting weights or doing impact exercise gives a reason for the bones to stay strong. Well, you told me a story just recently, just about how you came off your bike, unfortunately, last week, and didn't, and you came off your bike, an impact where, some people can just trip and fall and they'll break a wrist, but you actually came off a bike at speed and luckily didn't break anything. And that might be a testament to the fact that you do resistance exercise, because we know that when you do lift weights, it puts mechanical stress on the bones as well, and the bones have a reason to actually lay down more bone or keep the bone strong. Especially important in postmenopausal women. So when women go through the menopause and estrogen levels drop, we know that the rate of osteoporosis increases. So it's very important that especially women are exercising just the same as men, lifting heavy weights to prevent that from happening. And then actually, not only would you reduce the risk of fracturing your bones when you fall, exercising actually improves your function, mobility, and actually reduces the risk of falling as well. And we know that falling and breaking a hip can be a death sentence for people in their older years. So actually, if we can prevent that happening in the first place by exercising, we can reduce the risk of mortality. And actually, we know that groups that exercise more have a lower chance of dying prematurely, have a lower risk of cardiovascular disease and cancers. The two biggest killers of humans are those two. So there's just way too many benefits to be had from exercising not to do it. And once you understand that, I think that you have to just make it a priority. The world is becoming a more sedentary place. Rates of obesity are going up. People are now looking for the next thing to try and help them lose weight, whereas exercise is free. It's been there all along to try and improve weight management. Sleep is another one. People keep telling me they've got poor sleep and they're always fatigued and tired. Exercise helps regulate your sleep and gives you deeper and better sleep. So yeah, it's just I could talk about exercise forever. It's literally one of the most important things you can do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's fantastic. So thank you very much indeed. It's been great talking to you. It's nice to have a doctor, someone who's medically trained, who's
Mm,
a vegan and living very healthy
mm.
lifestyles and keen to pass on all that information to other people too.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you for having me on, Jane.